Welcome back to the show. And today I'm sharing a session from a workshop I ran recently, one that opened up some incredibly honest conversations about self esteem, identity, and the masks we learn to wear. As you listen, I'll invite you into the same reflections I offered the group, and I'll share a few of the questions that came up in the room. The kind of questions that help us see ourselves more clearly. So we began the workshop by exploring the tribal cycle, the emotional ecosystem that we grow up inside. Every family has one. Some are structured, some are chaotic, some are loving but unpredictable, some are emotionally silent. And as children, we don't get to choose the tribe. We just learn how to survive inside it. Now, I shared to the group, it's what's tolerated and what we feel we have to become to survive it. So here's the clip. Please enjoy. So it got me thinking about the subject of self-esteem and the roles and the masks that we wear and kind of the conversation that we're going to be having tonight. And it made me want to talk about a subject that I've learnt about within the last couple of years, and it's called the tribal cycle. And you may or may not have heard of this, but it's essentially, it's a set pattern of beliefs, values, systems within the family unit, no matter what that looks like, whether it's strict, chaotic, or more, whatever normal is, or out there. And it's what's tolerated, what's not tolerated, what we believe, what we're told we can do, we can't do. And it really took me back to some of the things that I had when I was growing up. And that need for me to belong or feel loved or be good enough just made me wear a mask. And that's kind of what's showing up for me in those situations. And I thought that would be a good jumping off point to sort of gauge a bit of a conversation tonight to see how that lands, whether that makes sense, whether anybody can relate. So essentially it's, you could drop it into a work situation or a community. It's what's tolerated and what we feel that we have to become to survive in that situation. And essentially we grow up in these systems up until we're around about 18 years old, and it develops who we are. I'm just going to share my screen just for this one slide. So give us a thumbs up if you can see that. Dan, thanks. So this is kind of getting back to our three selves. At our core, when we're born, we are loved. Essentially we're not impacted by the world around us, and we know no more. And as we grow up in the tribal cycle, in the family unit, we're told what we can't do, what we should do, what we must do, sometimes what to think, maybe don't cry, go make us proud, go be a success. Don't do that. Expecting to help, perfection, people pleasing. And we start to get this crud build up around our true self, our cause, and it starts to scab over. And as we start to go out into the world, we start to feel that we can't possibly be this person who goes out there with our core if we're expected to be feeling like we can belong, feel like we can be loved or be good enough. As we get older, we start to polish it off with a crust around the edges. And again, as we just transition through life, we think this is who we are, when in fact, it's not. And if you want to sort of try this on just to get an idea of what this could feel like, what it could look like, is try listening to that inner voice that comes up, the inner critic who's there to point out your mistakes and the flaws. And these are the roles that we take on as we move through life. And that's the mask that we wear. And tonight we wanted to just take the opportunity to just put those roles and those masks down even if just for one day. So welcome back. And what I'd like to share with you now is some of the questions that came up within the workshop. And one of those was, how do I know what my tribal cycle actually was? I don't remember much from childhood. So what I shared with the participant was, start with what you felt rather than what you can remember. Did you feel safe? Did you feel invisible? Responsible? Too much? Not enough? But to help you reflect on this work, here's some questions to explore deeper. What were the unspoken rules in your family? What behaviours were rewarded and what behaviours were shut down? What did you learn you had to be or not be to stay connected? And if you named your childhood tribe, what identity did it shape for you? So within the session, we also explored the masks that we wear, the roles we adopt to feel safe, loved, or accepted. And some of those in the group shared that their own masks came from wanting to belong, wanting to be loved, wanting to be good enough. And that's so true for many of us. A participant shared that the need to belong or feel loved or be good enough just made them wear a mask, but they weren't ever aware of that. And some other questions that came up were, is my mask the same thing as my personality? Because sometimes I can't tell the difference. And it's such a great question because our masks are usually rigid. It feels like something we have to be. Your personality is flexible, curious, and alive. And masks feel like pressure. Authenticity feels like breath. So here's some reflection questions for you. What mask did you learn to wear? How did that mask protect you? Where do you still feel yourself slipping into that role, even today? And if your mask could speak, what would it say it's protecting you from? So I also shared about the crud layer and our child experiences. And I went deeper into how child experiences can shape our core identity. Now, as kids, we're told what we can do, what we can't do, who we should be, and who we shouldn't be. And slowly, layer by layer, we move away from our natural self. And I describe this like this. We start to get this crud build up around our true self, our core, and it starts to scab over. Now, some of the questions that came up around this were, what if I don't know who my true self is anymore? And my answer to that would be, this is more common than you think. Your true self isn't lost, it's just quiet. And you'll recognize it in the moments where you feel ease, curiosity, or a sense of, this is me, even if no one else sees it. So start there, and some reflection questions that you can use right now to explore this deeper. What parts of your natural self did you learn to hide? What qualities did you have as a child that feel harder to access right now? And where do you feel the crud layer most strongly? Is it behavior, voice, confidence, relationships? And here's a coaching prompt. If you brushed away one layer of that crud today, what part of you might re-emerge? And we also explored the inner critic and self-reflection. And one of the most powerful moments in this workshop was when we explored the inner critic, that voice that tells us we're not good enough, that points out every flaw, that keeps us in the role we learned to play for such a long time. And I invited the group to pause and actually listen to that voice. Not to obey it, but to understand it. So try listening to that inner voice that comes up. The inner critic who's there to point out your every mistake and the flaws. Now, as we dug deeper on this, some of the questions that came up were, my inner critic sounds like a parent. Does that mean it's their fault? So, no, there's no right or wrong with this, and that's not necessarily what we're looking to do here. We're not looking to blame. The inner critic just borrows a voice from the past, but its job is always the same, to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. And the goal isn't to blame, it's to get understanding. So here's some reflection exercises for you. What does your inner critic sound like? What role does it think it's protecting you from, failing at? What does it fear would happen if you stopped wearing a mask? And a prompt here is, if your inner critic had a job title, what would it be? And do you still want it working for you? So as I wrapped up this workshop, and as we wrap up this episode, the message was simple. Authenticity isn't something you create. It's something that you return to, like a home base. By understanding your tribal cycle, noticing the masks you wear, and gently confronting the inner critic, you begin peeling back the layers that have covered your true self. And underneath all of that, you're still there, whole, intact, and enough. So take a moment after this episode to sit with one question. And that is, what part of you is asking to be seen again? Thank you for being here today. And remember, this is inner work for people who want to grow without losing themselves. and you're exactly where you need to be right now.